Yeah, I'll miss Wednesday. Yeah, me and Megan will. Yeah.
So how's the season going so far?
Good. We haven't started conference yet. Our game this weekend is once we hit conference. The games, they matter, but they don't matter, you know?
Right.
So, yeah.
But the conference games matter.
Yes, they do. Yeah, those are important.
God. How's the team doing so far?
Good. We're doing really well. Yeah. Like,
Okay.
really well. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
That's encouraging.
Yeah, it is.
Good luck on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Oh my good program.
How are you today?
One job.
Good. Mondays are always busy.
Yeah. I'll have classes in the morning. You guys outside of them?
Last time I thought she was out.
I don't know why. She said it was gonna snow.
It is snowing right now.
Oh.
How's your week going so far?
Good. I'm tired. I didn't get home until 10 p.m. last night, and then had to commute.
Wow. Yeah, that felt a long weekend, right?
Yeah.
On the road. Well, hopefully things settle down.
There's gonna be more chaos because I'm up in Ann Arbor all day Friday. Oh, by the way. Well, because it's a doctor's appointment and I can't drive myself, so I have to work with my girlfriend's work schedule. That's why. So like I'm gonna be here at home. I'll tell ya. You're here.
How are you doing?
I'm good. Alright. Advising is tough. Trying to register for classes and everything.
I thought that opens up.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see what classes I can.
Oh, trying to.
Every class, all the classes I need are all at 10 a.m.
Oh.
So I can't.
Max, can you do any of them as an independent?
That's what I have to try and figure out if I can.
Because there's one course I want to take that interferes with another class I want to take, and you want to do an independent, or I want to take it.
It depends on how many credits, but yeah, I know like freshmen and like sophomore next week. I think theirs is April 2nd.
No, I don't think it's anything for us yet.
I don't think ours opens until like the end of the week. I don't know. I just had my advising meeting today, and like the course catalog was posted. So the course catalog.
At least you can start looking at the courses. Yeah. But you got my email with the, so you can set the appointment?
Yes.
No rush. No rush.
Yeah, things like that.
I think you're kind of, like,
Yeah, it really just offer to the
oh, wow,
yeah.
yeah. Good point.
Yeah, pretty much matches up. Just a few last prereqs like bio.
Well, happy Monday, everyone. So today we're going to begin learning about the innate's immune system. So that'll kind of give us an understanding of how these microbes are able to cause disease if we understand how our own immune system works. But then we're on schedule to have our next exam on next week on Monday during class time. But I did post that practice test. Did anyone look at it? Has anyone looked at it yet? Yes? Okay, anyone else look at it? Okay, that's okay, you still have time. Also, I want to remind you that, since we finished chapter 13, you can upload your notes. Upload your notes from chapter 13 on the Blackboard. And also, if you haven't already uploaded your notes for chapter 12, please do so as well. Yep. All right, so we will have a guest popping in here shortly from Logan University. So let me get you started with chapter 14. All right, who's taking immunology this year? Anyone? Okay, that's all right. We're just going to give a kind of brief overview of what we call the innate immune system. So the word innate refers to your defense, your immune system that you have, from birth. So you already have a number of processes established to protect you from infection. So that's what innate refers to. Think of it as like inborn. And that's different from what we call the adaptive immune system. So innate's different from the adaptive. So the adaptive refers to the immunity that you develop after exposure to the environment, which can include pathogens. Okay, so again, innate means you have this, basic level of immunity from birth. Adaptive is is additional immunity that you develop over the course of your lifetime. All right, so this chapter's focus on innate immunity, and then the next chapter is about the adaptive immune system. Okay, any questions about those two, about differences between those two? All right, so let's learn about the innate immune system. This chapter goes through a number of different things. I didn't highlight any of those because we're going to be looking at those on individual slides. So just so that you understand that there's a number of different components or layers to your innate immune system. So it's not just one thing. Sometimes it's helpful to understand processes using analogies. So you're going to see the word, like defense used a lot. So there's kind of like a war analogy used here, where think of these pathogens as like an attacker, and your body will have systems set up to defend itself, to try and protect itself from these infections. So you're going to see words like that used quite a bit here. So we have words like defenses and things like invaders. Okay, so that's where the language is coming from. All right, we're going to take a break here for a moment. Get the lights back on here. And we have a special guest visiting us today from Logan University, who's going to talk about both chiropractic and their PA programs.
Yes.
So Mike.
Thank you. How many of you saw me this morning at some point? Oh God, sorry, I have to see you again. So it's just gonna take a couple minutes. Again, for those of you that I hadn't seen before, my name's Mike from Logan University. Logan, we're actually located down in Chesterfield, Missouri, which is outside of St. Louis. So our primary program that we're known for is chiropractic, doctor chiropractic program, which is it's a doctor level program. It's about 3 1/3 years in length. Typically, when I do these presentations, I talk to a lot of like exercise science majors because it's really just kind of a really good career path for them. However, we do have bio majors and other science-oriented majors in the program, allied health, health science majors, things like that. We also, which is relatively new for us, we're starting a PA program, physician assistant program, this coming January. So if you're not aware, nationally, there's actually a shortage of primary care physicians in the United States. So the PA profession, like in the last 10, 15, 20 years, has kind of exploded because, like I said, there's that shortage. Because a PA basically has the same rights and responsibilities as a medical doctor. However, education isn't as long. Typically, it's a 2-year program as opposed to, the 4-year and then a residency, that type of thing. So we made a decision to start the program. The plan right now is we're going to start our first cohort, about 40 students in January, and then once we receive official accreditation, which will typically, the way it works in higher ed, if you start a new program, programs are typically called pre-accredited, and once you graduate your first class, you receive the official accreditation. So once we kind of graduate that first class, then we can kind of expand. The plan is at some point that we're going to start the program more than just once a year, because typically, especially PA programs, you find they only start once, which is usually in the fall. If you happen to miss that application cycle, you have to wait a year. So with us we're on a trimester system, so we actually have 3 start dates in the year, and that's both the chiropractic program and the PA program. We can actually add other starts, so if somebody would happen to miss the fall, like theoretically turn around and start in January if they wanted to do that. So the other thing, we do offer some other online master's degrees that are more kind of focused on things like nutrition and human performance and sports science and rehab. The thing is, like with the chiropractic program, for example, that's a profession that tends to attract a lot of athletes or people who are former athletes. And athletics, as far as potential patient base, is a big attraction for practitioners. And a lot of times some of these master's degrees, especially things in like strength and conditioning and nutrition, can be a good complement to the chiropractic program. So we do actually have a number of students at Logan that are with us that are just getting a master's degree. They're not in the chiropractic program. So we kind of have a mixture of students there. So the only thing I guess I would kind of mention to wrap up is, again, depending on the career field that you choose, a lot of you are going to end up having to go on to graduate professional school, master's degree, doctorate degree, that type of thing. So what I would advice, if I could give you anything, would be to kind of start that process early instead of waiting. Maybe start sophomore year, maybe in your junior year, because one of the big things that you can really do to kind of help focus in on a career field is to go out and shadow. And I work with a lot, actually, as I was sitting out here a while ago, I was actually working with a student in Puerto Rico that I met. I just connected him with a chiropractor that I know in Puerto Rico to go shadow, because that is really going to give you a good opportunity to kind of figure out for yourself if you're on the right path as far as a career field. Because you have to look at things almost kind of from this perspective. You're going to be in a career choice here for the next 30 or 40 years of your life, and you want to make sure you're in the right career field, because you don't want to be stuck in a job that you're miserable and that you hate, because that's sometimes what happens to people. So shadowing would be a good step to kind of figure out if you're on that right path or not. Okay? And then as you start looking at graduate schools, obviously I'm assuming most of you came to visit here before you decided to attend. No different at that level too. And just make sure you feel like you're making the right decision. So I'm going to kind of wrap up because I don't have some time. But if anybody at any point has any questions for me, I don't know if there's anybody interested in here that's interested in chiropractic or PA. You can reach out to me at any point. Dr. June has my contact information, and we'll be happy to talk to you. I'll be out here for a few minutes. So before I step out, anybody have any questions about anything? I know I just kind of want to make this kind of pretty big, but no? Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. Again, Mike Lynch will be just around the corner here. If you do have questions after class, you just feel free to just turn the corner and he'll be sitting right outside the hallway there. Okay, so there's a number of analogies that are presented for you to help you to understand these different systems that are in place using this warlike terminology. So again, there's a number of different items here that are presented in this chapter. We're actually going to start off with these items on the left side. which are referred to as the first line. So these are systems or barriers that are encountered by pathogens when they first come in contact with you. So that's our first line of defense. So let's take a look at some of those slides. Well, previously when we learned about viral infections, whether it's a bacteriophage or a human virus, you remember what are some of the initial steps of infection? Like the virus encounters a cell, and then what happens? That's right, that's right. But before that, it has to attach, right? Come in contact, attach, and then inject its genetic material inside of that cell. In a similar kind of fashion, think about how other microbes, whether they be fungi or bacteria, when they come in contact with your body, the first thing they have to do is attach. They attach and then they have to grow, what we call colonization. So that's going to take place in the first parts of your body that they encounter. So, most of the time that involves intact skin. So on this kind of diagram here, I know it looks kind of funny here, but this outermost layer here, colored yellow-brown, represents skin. And then another common barrier that these microbes encounter are our mucous membranes. So these would be the inner linings of our lungs, for example, or those of our genitourinary tract, or perhaps with our digestive system if you were to eat or imbibe something. So all those intact layers present barriers, linings that the microbe has to cross in order to infect other parts of the body. Okay, so intact layers are actually a really good, is a really good prevention for infection. Well, why is it that these are substantial barriers to infection? Well, if you kind of think about it, especially with your skin, there's actually multiple layers of cells that need to be breached. And so most microbes are not built like a drill. They don't really bore their way in. Remember that a lot of bacteria don't even have flagella. They don't have any means for movement. And those that do just have those tiny little flagella on them. So it's really tough for them to try and penetrate, through or between cells. Let's see, what else we have on the slide? Wow, look at that. The outermost layer, especially of our skin, is composed of dead or dying cells that are sloughing off. So these microbes typically they need food. They prefer to get that food from live cells. They're not necessarily decomposers like the fungi are. And then so some skin, dry cells flaking off. I know most people don't like to see that happening on their skin, but that's actually an important part of your defenses. So that's normal. Okay, so we see, with you know, we saw with the skin where there's multiple layers, they're hard to penetrate. They're typically dry on the dry side. But the mucous membrane, on the other hand, that one is constantly bathed in secretions we call mucus. And so it's a moist environment, which microbes would normally prefer to be in. But fortunately for us, we actually have different means of moving those microbes or other kind of objects off of our mucous membranes. So for our intestines, we have this process called peristalsis, which is kind of like this contraction, relaxation response that kind of moves materials through the intestines. With our respiratory tract, we have all these tiny little cilia that will kind of move in a collective fashion to move substances. There's actually a really good kind of a funny story about how powerful, that exemplifies how powerful this mucociliary escalator is. So the story is that there was a guy with a push mower, and he accidentally ran over a small nail that was in his yard that he didn't know was there. And that push mower actually shot that tiny nail out of the ground and actually was projected and shot through and entered into his lungs and knocked him out his back. And then, you know, when he got up, he didn't know what had happened, and he just kind of went on normal with his normal life. Well, years later, he had a coughing fit, and it ended up that he actually coughed out that tiny little nail that he actually ran over with a lawnmower, because the tiniest, because this mucociliary escalator actually brought that nail out of his lungs into his throat, where he actually coughed it out. so it tells you just how powerful that system is for removing things. Okay, we're gonna see some pictures of people. Some of them are unclothed in this chapter and the following chapters. So just kind of be prepared for that. So we're looking at a list of different substances that our bodies produce that will actually prevent the growth of microorganisms. So first on our list is salt. So these are secretions that are coming off from our sebaceous glands from our skin that can accumulate on the surface. And although we learned that there are some microbes that like salt, those halophiles, the majority of microorganisms do not. So that in knowing that, we actually use salt as a means of food preservation. So most microbes don't like salt. In addition to that, our bodies make enzymes called lysozymes that will degrade the cell walls of microorganisms. I think I mentioned before that these lysozymes are produced in our tears that we secrete, from our eyes, so that can help to remove microbes from our eyes. We also make peroxidases that can break down hydrogen peroxide, lactoferrin and transferrin that bind iron. So you may have heard that we need iron. You know, like that's what our hemoglobin needs in order to, you know, bind to oxygen. Microbes also need iron for other purposes. So our lactoferrin and transferrin will basically sequester, will, you know, move the iron that's available and keep it for us and not make it available for microorganisms. And then we do make small proteins called peptides, and some of these are actually used to create pores in them, which are literally holes in the membranes of bacteria, so that they will leak out their contents and then they die as a result. Okay, so there's a variety of substances that our body makes that'll actually help prevent they'll prevent microbes from growing. Well, in addition to the substances we make, there are actually microbes that actually normally grow and inhabit our body, and they make substances too that can actually be protective. I know it can be disconcerting to think about the thousands of, you know, bacteria that are growing on or inside of our body, but they do help us. These microbes, which are termed the microbiota, or the natural flora, they actually help to compete for space and nutrients with potential pathogens. So if your body is covered with bacteria, pathogens don't have space in order to grow. There's too much competition for them to find food. So those microbes are actually really helpful. Some of them do make toxic substances, not to your body, but to help them to compete against these other microorganisms. For example, some of them make acids. Basically, they'll lower the pH and where other organisms don't like. Let's see. Oh, and then because we need these the microbiota. If we harm the microbiota by taking antibiotics that will indiscriminately kill microorganisms, then that can actually make us more vulnerable to infection. So there's actually a downside to taking antibiotics. So typically, if I had to take antibiotics, after, I go through the entire course, I try and reestablish that microbiota into my body. So I'm trying to get, trying to get lots of microbes back into my system. Think about, what kind of foods would contain all these, would be rich with bacteria. What do you think? Yogurt, good. So fermented foods, which already have bacteria in them, get those into your system. Yeah. And also, I know people don't like fruits and vegetables, but uncooked foods, like raw carrots, that kind of stuff. Salads. Those all also have, some microbes on them that you can use to replenish your microbiota. All right, next we're going to talk about some of the cells that make up our innate immune system. So there's actually quite a few here. We're going to see them on the next slide. And these cells originate from stem cells, more specifically these hematopoietic stem cells. So the hematopoietic stem cells are the source for these immune cells, and we're going to focus on white blood cells, also known as leukocytes. So we're looking at hematopoietic stem cells as the source for creating white blood cells, also known as leukocytes. And then on the next slide, we're going to see that there's a bunch of different kinds. There's different kinds of leukocytes. Okay, I like pictures, so I think you probably do too. So in this kind of graphic here, we want to start at the top. And this brownish colored blob here represents one of these hematopoietic stem cells, which is a source of these other cells down underneath it. So where do we find these stem cells? Well, they're located in the marrow of your bone, so what we call bone marrow. You're going to see this blue half circle on the left. So it says self-renewal. What do you think that means? Self-renewal. Any thoughts? What does self-renewal mean?
It can make itself.
It can make, right, that's right. It can reproduce, replicate, and make more stem cells. So that's cell division. Okay, so in other words, if one of these cells is, developing into, for example, a monocyte, then there's additional stem cells are being created to replenish the ones that developed into the leukocytes. So you'll have a constant source. All right, we're looking at a bunch of different kinds of cells here, but the ones that we want to focus our attention on are the leukocytes. So these are the ones that are involved in protecting you from infection. And remember that we have, this chapter is about the innate immune response or system. What was the other system? Adaptive. Okay, so when you look at these cells here, the cells involved in the innate immune system are going to be these granulocytes, and the macrophage and dendritic cell over here. So these are the cells here. They're going to be the focus of this chapter. Well, what about the cells on the right? Well, we're gonna read more about those and learn more about those in the next chapter when we look at the adaptive immune response. Okay, so we're only looking at this side here, not so much on this side over here on the right. Okay. All right, next couple of slides are going to be about these granulocytes, and they're named because they make granules. So in this picture here, you see these little circles, like this red one. We have a blue one over there. Those represent granules. So these are little vesicles that contain substances that the cells can release. They can release the contents of the granules to outside of the cell. And then we're going to see that these granules are going to be a little bit different from one cell to the next. The other thing is that these cells are named based on how they stained under the microscope. For example, there's a stain called eosin. It's kind of this kind of like a greenish stain, and that's how this cell here was named, because it's stained with eosin. So it's eosinophil. It likes eosin. Okay, so the names are pretty bad, right? All right, so let's learn more about these granule sites here. Okay. Okay, so again, they're going to release contents that are inside of the cell. So we're going to see, well, what is inside of those 3 granule sites? Well, the first one on our list are the neutrophils. And they contain granules that have, enzymes that will break down microorganisms like bacteria. So that's what they do. They release substances that will help to break down those microorganisms, like bacteria. Okay, they also will engulf. Did we talk about that before? This process of engulfing. The membranes of these cells will wrap around and then internalize substances. Let me sketch that one out real quick for you. Okay, let's pretend that this is our neutrophil. This is our granule with the whatever enzyme it happens to be. And then let's pretend this is our bacterium. Okay, and then when it engulfs it, the cell's going to wrap its membrane around it, and then help to internalize it. But don't forget, we have the granule. So now we have the granule fusing with that vesicle there. And then it'll release its contents inside of that. And then the enzyme can help break down the bacteria. Let's see you draw better than that. Any questions about that one? All right, let's move on to the other cell here. Basophils. They also have granules, which they will release. So, try to imagine this time. The granule has a chemical called histamine. And then the idea here is that that will fuse with the surface and then that gets released. Okay, so histamines are involved in creating inflammation. We'll learn more about inflammation, but just in general, we're talking about expansion of the blood vessels, so you get more blood flow. So that's actually why may that actually be helpful in fighting infections? If you want more blood flow.
Delivering more of your soldiers to the site.
That's right. That will allow more these immune cells to arrive at the site of infection to help with the battle, so to speak. Yep. Okay. But then, well, what if we have too much histamine? Well, then you don't feel good. Too much of anything, you don't feel good. So, some of you may have heard of antihistamines. You know, these chemicals that you can take to kind of treat that. And then the last one on our list here are the eosinophils. The eosinophils will fight out parasitic worms. So what do we mean by parasitic worms? Tapeworms, that's right, yeah. And other kind of like, flukes and things like that. Okay, so you got those. So again, we're talking about, these three right here, the granulocytes. Okay. Next, we're going to focus our attention on the macrophages and dendritic cells. They're going to be developing from this cell called the monocyte. Okay, so you got macrophages and dendritic cells. Let's see here. Okay, so again, the monocytes think of them as like the progenitors of the macrophages. So they go through this process of differentiation to develop into the macrophage. And the macrophages perform phagocytosis. Have you heard of that one before? Phagocytosis. So they will engulf. That's right. That's what we're looking at in this sketch over here. They will engulf foreign objects like bacteria. These are referred to as sentinel cells. So they will. They're actively searching for things to engulf and break down. Now, what's kind of interesting about these cells is that when they break down substances like bacteria, they'll actually take those substances, instead of excreting them, those substances actually get placed in the membranes of those macrophages. So if this is a macrophage, that bacteria, its pieces will be displayed on the outside of that macrophage. So it's a way of communicating. These are the substances I have found floating around, that I have found in communicating that with other immune cells that are in your body, and alerting them that there's there's something out there to be aware of. So that's what they mean by the sentinel. It's like kind of like a guard, so to speak, alerting other cells of foreign substances. That may be a pathogen. Okay, and then in addition to those macrophages, we also have dendritic cells. So here are these dendritic cells. So they are similar to the macrophage. They will also engulf materials. So they're looking for foreign substances like bacteria. They will internalize them, break them down, and also will display components on the outside of their membranes. So what's a little bit different about these dendritic cells is that they will actually trigger these other cells we call B and T cells, which are actually part of our adaptive immune response. So there's another layer of responses that can occur, which is triggered by these dendritic cells. So there's overlap between the innate and adaptive immune response, and this overlap is possible because of these dendritic cells. They're communicating between systems here. Okay, let me see what's the next slide. I don't remember. Okay, I think we're gonna stop here. Yeah.
The dendritic cells come from that.
No, they're different from the they're similar to the macrophages.
Oh, macrophage.
But yeah, let me back up real quick here. Well, they have similar origins, but this one here is going to be just like a macrophage, but now it's going to help trigger the T and B cells. So that's what this the job of the dendritic cell is over here. Like this one's just on its own.
Same derivative, same thing, essentially, it just doesn't.
But just doesn't interact with the T and B cells. That's correct, yeah. All right, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon for lab.
Yeah. I like it.